17th of December 2021. Design session. And go!
Oh, right. Okay. So this is either gold or shit, as I said to you on Discord.
Yeah.
I think there's something in this that you will immediately hate, but I want you to remember to keep your open mind to shit ideas are just good ideas waiting to happen. Philosophy, whatever that was from last time. So we talked about this intro sequence where you're the big hero and the big QTE thing, and well, not QTE, but like making it action led and simple and blitz throughable. And we had a different philosophy on it, which was that I wanted to sort of remain in that environment quite a lot, and you wanted to sort of blitz through it, and then it's done, and then we're into the tavern. Which, so we've got that. Like, I don't know how fixed that is. We've left it with a little bit of wiggle room, but my thinking was that I don't really know where the rest of the game is going after that peak, which is that what worries me is that that intro sequence is like, oh, you're the best of the best, you're a hero, and you're a warrior, and you're an adventurer, and then whatever story we come up with by nature is worse, right? That, let's say we put some sort of Largo Embargo bully character in to the tavern, and there's like whatever the tavern adventure is, it's not as, the stakes aren't as high as this intro sequence, and I wonder how you end a game like that satisfyingly. When the world is, hey, congratulations, but the world is still shit, and you fucked it up. I don't know. Maybe that's good. Maybe there's fun to be had in that. Anyway, so that's what I was thinking of. So I hadn't got in my head what the overarching motivation was for the player, and I think that's what set me off thinking about this, was that you do this intro sequence where you're really cool, and then there's this tavern bit, and I didn't really know where the tavern bit went. So that's just as background. That's where my head was when I was thinking this through. So the idea is that we go from the intro section, and then like 5 years later, and in my head there's like you sitting, the main character, like sitting in a muddy puddle with like what's that called? Like, not stop motion, but where you don't capture every frame, and there's like
time lapse type thing,
time lapsey sort of stuff, right? Of like people just like dropping things on you and spitting on you, and you're just like absolutely down and destitute, and it's really, really bad. So 5 years later, and you're sitting on the floor of this tavern, and everything's really, really crap. And we can do some like really nice introductory stuff to like why you're in the tavern and everyone being mean to you and what your job there is and stuff like that. And the idea is that this orc comes in, or like some big like beefy adventurer type, dressed in traditional Lord of the Ringsy sort of, hey, adventuring, swaggering hero sort of thing, and he's got a dreamstone, which is a gem, and dreamstones are like bad demon magic, right? Like bad juju sort of deal, whereby when you break them, it takes you, the magic inside takes you back to your life's biggest regret and lets you undo it, right? So that immediately gives the player a MacGuffin to go after, right? So this orc is sitting there at the table bragging about how he's got this dreamstone and what it does, and like through a series of tavern-based servitude stuff, you acquire the dreamstone and you break it, and it takes you back to that intro sequence, right? But because you're still you go back to that intro sequence where at the moment what happens is the elfie goblin cohort guy dies, and then you can pick up his whip, right? So the natural thing I'm thinking is that like you go back to your biggest regret and you go, quick, you've got a whip on you, right? Give me the whip. I can kill the dragon. So the elf guy gives you the goblin guy gives you the whip, and you like whip the dragon, and you pull its head off, and the head flies across the room and lands splat onto the goblin guy, who immediately dies, like in a different way. And then we cut back to 5 years later, that sequence, the time-lapse sequence of you sitting on the floor of the tavern, and like you fucked it again. And that's then we've got this self-contained joke, or this self-contained like setup where your guy, like every episode or whatever that we do, he's got a new harebrained scheme to go back in time and refix it, and like we can do like loads of different fantasy sort of ways of that happening, and every single time the elf goblin guy dies in a slightly different way. You get closer and closer to that point, but you can never really make it. And what I thought was interesting about this is that every single time that you go back in time and fuck it again, something changes in the tavern, right? So it's not the exact same universe because things are different. So for whatever reason, like maybe there's a door that wasn't there before, or maybe there's a character who is a complete arsehole, but now they're like a complete pushover, or things change in an interesting way. And I'm aware that this like is immediately like a very sci-fi setup in what was traditionally a very fantasy video game, but I think it works. I think it gives the whole thing like a cohesive structure, right? It makes it more solid in my head as to what's going on and why, and I like that. There you go. That's the end of my pitch. What do you think? you hate the idea of going back in time in fantasy.
No, not at all. No, it's magic. That's fine. That's fine. It's a very different. I don't know. It feels like it's taking it in a very different direction.
But I mean, like the meat and bones.
Yeah, go on.
So the meat and bones of the game hasn't actually changed. It's just that the MacGuffin is. We make the MacGuffin accessible through all the same sort of stuff we were going to do before, which is like basically a tavern full of ne'er-do-well fantasy characters, and a grumpy chef and a boss who's a dick and all the rest of it, and serving tables, and you still have to do it through your like worm tongue, chatting and using inventory items and what have you. So it's a thing like building up. Like, how do you get through? This orc has, I could get that gemstone if he was so drunk that he was asleep, and if he didn't have, I'd have to find some way of breaking the chain that's got it. He's got manacled to his hand. No, whatever. The three things, and then the way you sort out those three things is through all your usual tavern-based adventuring.
Okay, so why is this better than the thing we had, the gag, the wizard portal gag we had?
Because that's just like to me, that's just like a damp squib ending for a player. Okay. I don't really feel like there's any motivation to get there. Like you're just you're working in a tavern and then it ends, and there's no drive to get there. There's nothing to reach for, and that worries me. That you need a setup that naturally immediately gives you an end point to work for, right? So the guy coming in with the gem is like, we have to destroy the Death Star, and you know where it's going to go and you know where it's going to end. We can fuck around after that, but giving the player that signal that where the game is going to end, or where we're driving you towards, I think that's critical. So because at the moment the whole thing just feels really like airy fairy to me. I haven't got a handle on what's happening. There's a danger that it's like just going to be a series of puzzles in a tavern and then it ends, and I don't really feel like that's got any oomph behind it.
Yeah.
But a fantasy Groundhog Day is immediately more arresting to me.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean the end goal we had before was escaping the pub, wasn't it? It was escaping the tavern, like escaping your magical contract.
Yeah.
But I can see, that then. But and then we did the rug pull anyway. Like, so the ending was like a joke. Was the joke was that you're still stuck in the tavern and you didn't succeed at anything. But
I mean, we can still do that. That feels like a subpart rather than a whole entire thing to me.
Yeah.
But it's just about giving the whole thing structure and having an understanding what the framework is, rather than just being like, oh, and then you work in a tavern and we'll work it out from there. I think working out what the end game is kind of important to know, to understand where we're going with it, and that works for me because it brings us back to that environment. It makes sense of that environment. It makes sense of the characters. It makes sense for the characters' motivations. To try and undo the past. I think there's a lot of nice indie game stuff in there about you can't change the past. We can do some quite meaningful stuff with it, which I always like. But you're not convinced.
Not immediately like holy shit, 100% convinced. It's interesting. It's not that this is an issue. It's interesting that we're going in a very different direction from the original. Like, the original tone of it was that it was kind of his life is small and crappy, and like it's very low key, low stakes. But I can see the value in changing that. But originally, we were like, oh, we don't want him to be saving the world. We don't want him to have a chance at saving the world at the end of the game and this kind of thing. But
which is more interesting and which is funnier? I think is the deciding.
Yeah.
Was the deciding factor to me. Like, this reminds me of the Clockwork God puzzle, where it was like, wouldn't it be funny if we had a puzzle that was really, really boring, and then we implemented it, and it was funny, but it was also a very boring puzzle. You know what I mean? And like, what about a game where you play as like a downtrodden guy with really, really low stakes, and it's like, yeah, but that's going to wind up being a game with low stakes. And I worry that a game that's just about being in a tavern, why would you fire it up again? You play it for the first time, you sit down and you play it for 3/4 of an hour. What's your motivation to start the game up a second time the next night if all you're doing is waiting on tables and trying to unlock a door? That worries me. I mean, maybe the solution is less to like beef up the second section, but to lower the stakes of the first section. If that's a worry, right? If the world's not ending in that first section, if there's just like a tyrant king or something that you're trying to usurp and you fail, right? So it's immediately less low. It's immediately more low key. So it keeps the tone of it down, but the time travel magic stuff still gives the player the motivation we want.
Okay.
Also, I tell you what else, the elf guy, no matter what you do, the elf guy dying in like 30 different ways, I find that fucking funny. Like, so every time you're like, okay, you just stand right there and don't say anything, okay? And then, like, because of the series of events you do, this like one brick happens to fall down off the ceiling and knock him dead. You know, like whatever you do, he's a goner, and like loads of, you know, like I can see like a montage of different ways that he dies horribly.
Right. Okay. So, and then what? So the ending of the game would be that you do succeed and you do rewrite time.
I figure like the end of the first episode would be that you're back in the tavern and no better off than you were at the start of the game, but something has changed that's immediately gives the player hope, right? So there's like, I don't know, not this, but like, you know, there's a new door or whatever. There's something of interest that's changed as a result of your actions. I think, you know, if we did do more episodes, I think there's like a nice, we can tie that up with a bow and have it be a satisfying ending. Like, not this, but like the bully character who's a dick to you throughout in the tavern section is suddenly now, because of the way you change things, we'll weave it cleverly so that he's now, I don't know, a lizard creature stuck in a jar or whatever. Like he gets his comeuppance, blah blah blah.
I see. Right.
And then episode 2, if we did episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, the idea is that we can stay in the same environments, and we can just add in different ways of going back in time, different ways of it fucking up, and every time you come back, something's changed, and open up new areas and new things to explore, and you know, play with characters in interesting ways that changes their dialogue. And
I do think actually, if the time travel thing is taking over that heavily, it does feel a bit of a waste of a fantasy environment. I don't know. It does feel like you could just do that in a sci-fi environment.
You could, but why not do it in a fantasy environment? People don't do time travel in fantasy environments, and it's a unique selling point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway, all right, go and think about it. I'll think of other ideas. I think that the main thing is that I don't know if let's say we go back to what we had before we started talking. I can't, as I said, I can't see how this game ends.
Right.
In an interesting way, and I can't see. I can't get the structure of it in my head, because it's so sort of willy wash, you know, like it's unformed and weak. And I think if we had an idea of like the box that it sits in, the thread that you follow from start to finish, and what that satisfying ending is, I'm willing to. I'll go away and have other ideas and sit and think about it if you're not happy with this. But I think at the moment it's just so. It needs that broad stroke defining, if that makes sense.
I'm thinking we should make this a podcast. As per usual, the podcast section will be very short at the top, and then we'll just do a session. But I do want to do like a podcast intro where we talk about the limited run thing quickly.
Oh yeah, news has happened.
Yeah. So, shall we kick off the podcast? Do you want to do a welcome? You never do a welcome.
No, I don't have the social skills to do a welcome. You do it.
Okay.
I mean, like, you know, like the presenting chutzpah that you've got. That sort of like, you know, I would get halfway through a sentence and then start talking about something else entirely. So, like, that's why you're in charge. Go. 3, 2, 1, go. Intro.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Martial Warfare.
Yeah. So the fantasy. I haven't really thought about the fantasy game in some time. Well,
I have
over Christmas. I had like a. Oh, have you had many thoughts?
I've got notes.
Oh shit! All right, then you go ahead. Shall I go and get my big George Lucas no stamp for like?
Dan, you are a big George Lucas no stamp.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds hilarious. Right.
It does.
Okay, so I've got another one of my big documents to read through. But like, so a lot of this you touched on our previous design session, which I will probably cut in just prior to this one. You know, you had your idea of the time crystal thing, so I've been thinking about it since then. I think so. I think some general thoughts I have. Firstly, I think we need to either design it as a set of episodes and plan for it to be episodes and go like, this is the episode structure, or we design it as a single game with a proper ending, even if the ending is like a joke cliffhanger, like Back to the Future or Been There Done That or whatever, but like, as you know, it's an ending that suits that game, and then we can think about episodes and sequels later. But I think we need to decide from the start what we're doing with that. And the other thing is that I think, as you alluded to, the prologue has kind of thrown the scale of the thing off balance. I think we need to decide if we're either doing like what kind of closer to what we were talking about originally, which is a more intimate, small scale tavern based game, or we do something bigger. And what I am leaning towards sticking with that kind of smaller scale. And so I think what we need to do, if we go that route, I think we need to keep the prologue very small and short, and our approach to it needs to be that because the two routes we have are either the problem that our character needs to solve is, or that his main problem is the fact that the bad guy has taken over the world, and that's the main issue, and the fact that he's an ex-hero now is like is a side issue to that, or the main issue is that he's not a hero anymore and he used to be and he wants to be a hero again, and the thing with the big baddie is just that's why he's not a hero anymore, but that's backstory, that's just extra flavour. And personally I feel like I lean towards going for the second one, where it's smaller scale, it's set in a tavern, it's it's more about the like getting to know the characters in the world and everything like that. Because I watched Labyrinth like twice over the Christmas period, and the thing that gets me excited every time I watch that movie and I think about making a game in that style, the thing that excites me is like all these different interesting characters and how you can kind of imagine that they interact, and there's like little social groups and stuff like that, and like just getting thrown into that world of this little contained space where all these different things are overlapping and they're all funny and, you know, full of character and inventive and stuff. That's what I get excited about. I'd also be excited to do like a big epic kind of fantasy thing where we're doing time crystals and big celestial baddies, but I think in that case, honestly, we may as well just come out of the tavern and, you know, just have it set in a town or whatever, like kind of make it a bit bigger. But so what I did, so as I'm leaning towards the smaller scale, I thought I'd try and come up with a few things for that. But I think like regarding the episode thing, like I say, I think, you know, if we're going to say it's an episode, then we should plan ahead and be like, and work out the structure of the 5 episodes or whatever. We should have something like that, you know, it's 5 years and this is year one and we have a vague idea of what we're going to do, or we should say this is a game, this is a standalone story that we're hoping to make sequels to, but if we don't, it's, you know, it's not going to be really, it's not going to feel half finished, you know. Yeah. Yeah, which we hope will do well enough that, yeah. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so I was thinking that we could keep the prologue in if we kept it really small, but probably I think probably you're right that like we should probably just ditch it and just do it through dialogue and stuff like that. So what I was thinking was that the end goal is to become a hero again. Like that's his problem, that's his issue, that's his main, you know, I don't know the screenwriting term. That's his that's his character's yeah. So and everything should feed into that. So what I was thinking was that, you know, you open and you're in the tavern cleaning toilets or whatever, and like maybe someone new to town comes in, and they're again, you know, this is maybe like the slightly more boring version of it, but like we can zhuzh it up. But like I was imagining that you're in the toilets cleaning them. Two people come into the toilets. One of them is new to town, so they don't know the whole deal, and they're talking about how they've got some problem that needs to be solved, and they need to find a hero, like, you know, and they talk about heroes in the way you would bounty hunters or whatever. Like they need to hire a hero to sort this problem out. And so you say, "Oh, I'm a hero. You can hire me," and then the other person who lives in town will kind of, you know, laugh you off and kind of do a bit of exposition and say, "You don't want to hire this guy. He fucked the whole thing. You know, he can't even leave the tavern because he's under a magical contract or whatever. Blah blah blah." But because the guy's new to town, like there's, you know, he's willing to take a chance on you if you do three things, like, you know. So obviously you kind of have to get a weapon, you have to prove your worth to him, so you have to kind of do something heroic to show that you still have like the capacity for heroism, and you have to work out how to leave the tavern. And so, you know, that can be like breaking the magical contract, and that kind of however we do that. And so all the ideas that we've had for puzzles so far, they can all kind of we can kind of feed those all into this central thing of proving to this guy that you can be a hero and that you're worth hiring again and getting a new gig, basically. And then yeah, you know, and then the main task is just kind of going to be making it as interesting and exciting as possible. And I think we just need to keep that in mind and make all the puzzles, you know, we can still like make the tavern as exciting a space as possible. So we could do that thing where it used to be a castle and they've taken it over and they've just kind of like, you know, they've got some they've taken the throne and like turned it into the bar or whatever, and they've just like they've kind of stuck a couple of barrels in the back, and they've ripped all the paintings down, and or you know, all this kind of thing. So you've got like there's that you could have like the astronomy tower or whatever is an interesting room that you can discover, or whatever whatever we want to do. And the thing you were saying about it feeling quite like trapdoor, like, you know, there's stuff living in the walls and it's all quite anarchic and everything. And also, you know, the puzzles don't have to be just because we're like doing it in this smaller scale. The puzzles can still be exciting. It can still be like blowing holes in walls and doing spells on people and all this kind of thing. Just like, you know, making sure that it's not a grind. Those were my main things that I was thinking of, and the character arc would be, you know, he's learning to get help from others and not be like not be gatekeepy about who can be a hero and who can't and that kind of thing. Checking his privilege and that kind of stuff. Kind of low key kind of character arc. And the last thing I thought is that we could potentially do a like a rug pull ending where you finally get the hero gig and you go to this guy's house and he's been talking about how these monsters have infested his new home that he's moved to, and it turns out they're rats and he just needs you to kill 100 rats. And you just have the credits rolling as you're just like, use sword on rat.
I think the ending will come much later on.
Cool.
I think the intro is nice, but I don't feel like it's lending itself particularly to a nice. I can't immediately think of a way of doing an interesting puzzle to start with in when your job is cleaning toilets. Mm-hmm. It feels a little bit like, hey, your job is to clean some toilets, and the immediate puzzle is you have to clean some toilets. Mm-hmm. Is very boring. Like maybe if the toilet is so blocked, you have to come up with some ingenious way of cleaning it, or like it's so blocked you have to trick someone else into cleaning it for you because it's such a revolting job. Is much more interesting.
I was thinking you could say that like the poo monster actually shits out lovely crystal clear water. So you have to, like, everyone else obviously covers the toilet in shit, but the plop monster, like, you need to get him a load of drink or whatever so that he'll come and shit all over the toilet and clean it.
I think that's a bit too much.
Oh.
Like there's a bit in Dogma. I really liked Dogma. It was like a nice Kevin Smith, like, well scripted, well acted film, but had these like big. So instead of being like really small like Clerks and Mallrats, it had this like big thing going on, but it was the same sort of stuff and the same sort of characters. But the bit with the shit demon coming out, I always was like, I always felt that was like really eye rolly and bad. It was just, it felt really try hard. It never sat well with me. Like it's just like I would quite happily have cut that out because it was embarrassing.
Like very kind of lowbrow. Like, humor,
in what is otherwise, it's not like Dogma was particularly highbrow, but like quite a lot of the humour came from like witty dialogue between characters, and then there's suddenly this big like literally shit joke that never really sat with me. Anyway, but like, not that I'm above some toilet humour, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not, obviously.
Maybe the first joke in the game shouldn't be a shit monster.
And I do feel a little bit. We've already done a blocked toilet, gross way of unblocking it puzzle in Time Gentlemen Please, haven't we? So like, I do feel like we're going over old ground by unblocking toilets. I just wonder if there's something slightly more like toilets is good because it's like it could not signify his fall from grace more than the game opens with him literally lowest of the low.
I mean,
not to disparage people who clean toilets, so you understand, but like he's obviously come from a position of some importance and privilege, and now he's not. And opening in a toilet, I think, works well.
I've done cleaning jobs. I've cleaned toilets, and I do not feel like an epic hero while I'm doing it. I mean, like the opening puzzle doesn't have to be a cleaning the toilet puzzle. Like we can open in the toilets for the cutscene and the exposition or whatever. We don't actually have to make the player clean the toilets if we don't want to. We can be like immediately into the he's now got this opening that he can maybe be a hero and just go straight into that. Or we could have, we could have a tutorial section where it's like, it's just very simply, here's how you talk to, here's how you pick up, here's how you use, and that is you cleaning the toilet, and then the characters come in and start talking, and like, so that first puzzle is is a bit boring because it's just you cleaning toilets, but it's also the tutorial, and it's like it takes you like 1 minute before the actual plot starts. Or we could not do that. We could just we could do something exciting and big. Or
no, I like the idea of like really simple learning how to use the UI puzzle right at the start, but that same thing we had with like the dragon's head coming off and all that sort of stuff, and people being covered in blood, that like the player laughing because they can't believe that they're actually doing it. That sense of I can't believe this is the opening puzzle. And I don't think it should be cleaning a toilet, because I think that is too try hard. Like maybe there's like a corpse, or like a there's been a fight or something, and you have to clean up some horrific squid monster thing and
it can be something... like it could be like a squid monster got killed and there's goop all over the place and you're having to clean up goop, but it's not so it's still like fall from grace, you're just covered in muck, but it's not like we're not kind of tying ourselves into you are cleaning a toilet. That basically traps us into doing poo jokes, doesn't it?
It does.
I think you're right.
I'm going to make a note of that, because I think that's something I need to sit and think about, because it's not going to be very interesting. But yeah, that first puzzle. Let's just assume that gets done, right? That there's some menial task that is funny and unpleasant, and then this the two characters come in and they have their conversation, and then they walk out. You use the door, and you're through into the tavern, which is just this like scene of absolute bedlam in my head, right? Yeah. That there are goblins swinging from the chandeliers. There's like orcs fighting in the corner. There's like various different characters scattered around, like labyrinth, like you say. Like there's just there's loads going on, and like entire walls shaking, with each punch that punches a orc into them, and like just so much stuff, densely packed. One environment hugely densely packed, and it's about working your way around that room, solving problems to get your three things.
Genuinely, like just one room, like
with some scroll.
Yeah.
So like one big scrolly room.
Yeah.
I think is sensible.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea that like we can get quite into the weeds with if you talk to one person about something, and it turns out that they don't like that guy over there, and you can go and talk to that guy about it. And even if it's not a puzzle, it's just it's like you say, it's like the Frasier thing. You're just getting extra kind of character relationships and jokes, and just by going around and talking to people and finding how this world works.
Yeah. That works well for me. I don't immediately think there's any benefit in us talking about this on camera, because I think it's basically going to be a lot of you and me going I think like if anything we should cut the recording, have like another 20 minutes of just chatting just in case anything comes to light, but I think it's a go away and think about it on our own.